It's spooky month currently, and while I don't go around parading in costumes demanding candy from random strangers on my neighborhood, no, but I need to make a spooky video this month, and I actually don't want to scare myself with Alien Isolation, so we're gonna play a game that's much scarier than that. Something that makes shivers go down your spine every time you hear its name. A game that makes Until Dawn and Alien Isolation look like games for 5-year-olds. Luigi's Mansion on the Nintendo GameCube. The GameCube handles unnecessary and the discs are a bit too small, but not too shabby, not too shabby. While the GameCube didn't really place well in the 6th generation of video game consoles, it boasted some of the best Nintendo-made games, like Super Mario Sunshine, Super Smash Bros. Melee, and Mario Kart Double Dash, plus the start of many new franchises that people would go on to idolize, like Pikmin, Animal Crossing, and our topic for today, Luigi's Mansion. Luigi's Mansion revolves around Luigi winning a mansion in a contest he didn't enter, and upon arriving, well, Mario's gone and the house is haunted. After meeting Professor Egad and barely avoiding some ghosts, your goal is now simple. Find Mario, who had arrived at the home much earlier, and suck up all the ghosts to get them in their paintings because Egad asked you to. How do you do this, you might ask? You do so with your trusty backpack vacuum cleaner, the Poltergust 3000. Controlling the Poltergust 3000 is super intuitive and smooth. To capture a ghost, you shine a light on them and then you hold the right trigger to suck them in. And of course, seeing as ghosts really don't want to be in captivity, they'll run away from the sucking of the vacuum, so you have to pull the control stick back to compensate. It may be somewhat confusing when you first get into it, but once you get past the first area, the controls feel natural and fluid. When you get the elemental coins, as I'm going to call them, you get access to expunging fire, water, and ice. Some ghosts require elements in order to even try to suck them up. I think those ghosts break up the monotony of just lighting them up and then putting them in your vacuum, but if you just happen to not have the element needed to get rid of them, you'll probably be trapped. There are many different types of ghosts, each varying in color and health, and they will all attack in various ways, like punching, slamming the ground, and hugging you to death. While these ghosts are a bit of a challenge, the portrait ghosts are the real deal. Each portrait ghost has at least 100 points of health, and you can't just shot them with your flashlight and suck them into the poltergeist. No. You have to do a different thing for each different portrait ghost, like just wait a little bit, expunge elements, and then fight off hordes of ghosts. Each portrait ghost has a personality. They're less like the boring spirits that follow you around the entire game. They're more like actual humans occupying different parts of the house. I really love the portrait ghosts. Each personality feels as human as possible, as if they're just living their lives even if they get dead. My personal favorites were Madame Clairvoyant, Biff Atlas, and Clockwork Soldiers. Madame Clairvoyant is an actual fortune teller, one that actually helps you find out what's going on with Mario and why he's gone. She goes lightly into the poltergeist as well, which makes your life a whole lot easier. Biff Atlas is cool, most because of how he's supposed to be with his own exercise equipment, and also because his personality is actually quite funny. And the Clockwork Soldiers are really interesting because of how you have to take them out. You have to take off their wind-up spring before you can even get them into their vacuum. I like all three of these. They all have cool personalities, and the way they go into the poltergeist is interesting enough that it breaks from the monotony. But the portrait ghosts are only the middle of the iceberg. Let's go deeper, shall we? Let's talk about the bosses. As a first boss, Chauncey is quite easy. You just vacuum the bouncy spheres at him after he sends rocking horses towards you. But due to the game's mechanics, you can actually take off a lot of health from Chauncey, seeing as he only has like 100 HP, the equivalent of a normal portrait ghost. But it does take a lot of effort and skill to do so, as Chauncey will eventually get out of a vacuum's reach because, well, he has to go to the other phases. I personally think this fight is actually pretty good. It's not overly hard, so it eases you into the cycle of catching boss ghosts. However, this fight doesn't really have much to talk about, so let's move on. I really don't like Bogmire. It kind of feels like a repeat of what Chauncey was, but without the enjoyability, ease, and charm that Chauncey had back there. Bogmire, on the other hand, has no charm, seeing it is literally just a personified shadow, and even being compared to Chauncey, he's really easy to the point that there's nothing to really highlight about him. He's a boring boss and he doesn't really have much to talk about, so let's move on. Boolossus is an interesting idea, a bunch of boos grouped together to destroy Luigi. This makes sense canonically because boos get their strength from numbers. But during my first Boolossus fight, most of the boos flew out of range of a Poltergust 3000. This doesn't seem to be a problem in the 2018 3DS port, but in the 2001 original on GameCube, boos can fly anywhere, and that includes away from the roof. And for me, this happened multiple times, but the actual fight is actually pretty good. You have to use your vacuum to move the Boolossus towards the unicorn statue to pop it, or if you're really good like me, you can just lure it to the unicorn statue by itself, and then you ice up the boos and select them into the Poltergust. Straightforward enough, but it's quite challenging due to how many boos are flying around. I do quite enjoy this boss fight. Excluding the ADSC that the boos can up to, it's a good fight, not too shabby at all. I love this boss fight, with its amazing atmosphere and its fun gimmick of having to blow off Bowser's head to suck up King Boo. And sometimes his head will go on backwards, and during the time you're sucking up King Boo, the head will try to freeze you. It's really good. I really like it. This boss fight's quite hard, but it's not a 10 out of 10 spicy, you're gonna fucking die so many times, so don't even try type boss fight. I enjoy this fight not only because of the atmosphere, but also because of the way you defeat him. All in all, a great way to end off the game. I think the gameplay and mechanics plus the enemies and bosses equal a great game with many different ways to approach basically everything inside the mansion being available to the player. I love the gameplay of Luigi's Mansion, but it would not be as good if not for the For a Nintendo GameCube game in 2001, the particle, dust, and elemental effects still hold up almost 19 years later. However, seeing dust will probably get on your nerves because whenever you walk, dust just appears out of nowhere. It gets annoying to see it over and over again every time you walk because it just kind of takes away from the whole idea of dust. However, the water, fire, and ice effects are extremely detailed. The water behaves as if you're spraying water from an actual hose. See? Very realistic. Particles aren't the only things that hold up in terms of presentation. Luigi's model, as well as the models for every single entity in the game, are extremely expressive and almost perfectly animated. Luigi, while he only has like 2 or 3 emotions throughout the entire game, those being scared, really scared, and somewhat happy, he looks nice. But it's not just Luigi that has this much emotion. Egad and Mario, when you finally find them again, are quite expressive and full of life themselves. You can see the enthusiasm in Egad and how he jumps when you're using the Ghost Portraitionizer. And it's really cool to see him. He seems so invested in his creations, not only from what he says about it during gameplay, but from his body language. Luigi's Mansion is filled to the brim with show-don't-tell ideas, especially in character designs and emotions, and I love seeing them. It adds a lot of character to each entity in-game, and it makes the game much more enjoyable to play. And the ghosts emotions are absolutely perfect. They're animated as if they're just there to spook, and I love how they just pop out of nowhere with their little spook animations. Luigi's Mansion is one of my favorite games of the Nintendo GameCube, and it perfectly demonstrates what makes the GameCube its controller and its specs can do perfectly. It is a charmful, surprising, funny, technologically impressive masterpiece. And if you're able to emulate / actually grab a GameCube and play through this game, you'll be met with a world so great you'll be excited to see what they do next. And you know, they did do something. See you next Halloween. We'll be talking about Dark Moon.